Hello, everyone. This is section 2 of session 5 of Pre-Socratics to Augustine, also called History of Philosophy 1. Today, we talk about another dimension of who Socrates is and why he is so famous and why he also really initiated a kind of turnaround in Greek philosophy. The early Greek philosophers, as we saw, were either quote unquote natural philosophers engaged in like asking what is the universe made of, what is the origin of the universe, or like Parmenides asking kind of really big picture metaphysical questions about the nature of reality. And Socrates doesn't do that. Now, it's a kind of difficult question, and it's a question that we will discuss in the coming weeks. What is it that instead he's doing? Why is he so famous? Why is his method of inquiry so famous? And how did it work that he kind of, to some extent, initiated Greek ethics and so on and so forth? Today, I just want to focus on this distinction between him and the natural philosophers. One charge against him. As you probably know, Socrates was sentenced to death on account of a number of charges. One of these charges was that he actually does natural philosophy. And in one of Plato's dialogues, the Phaedo, where we see Socrates sitting in his prison cell, meeting with friends, it was possible for him to meet with friends there and have conversations there with friends in his prison cell before his death. We see him there discuss death and discuss the immortality of the soul and questions like that. And in that kind of context, Plato offers a kind of quasi autobiography of Socrates. He makes Socrates tell his friends about, how it was when he was young. And in that context, Socrates, to some extent, kind of admits or says, yes, I did natural philosophy at some point, but it disappointed me. And we want to talk for a moment about why was it disappointing for Socrates? So Socrates says, well, I was reading all these guys and they had all these different views, and the fire is the constituent of everything in the universe, or maybe the four elements, fire, water, earth, and air, or maybe atoms and void, or some other kind of component, constituent, physical stuff that makes up the natural world. And none of that seemed to speak to the kind of interest that Socrates had. And we'll get to that in a second. But Socrates sort of singles out one pre-Socratic philosopher, someone who we haven't yet mentioned, Anaxagoras. And he says, well, then I found the views of Anaxagoras, and I was really enthusiastic. I thought maybe that's it. Maybe that is what really persuades me and what I find compelling. Namely, what was it that Anaxagoras was saying? The big claim was that nous, which is the Greek word for mind or soul or intellect, sort of something in that domain. We'll just for now say mind, that mind is the cause of everything. And Socrates says, I really like that. That sounded great. That mind is the cause of everything. And, you can see kind of intuitively speaking, what is the big difference between saying that fire and earth and water and air or atoms or whatever, if you say that those kinds of things are the causes of the world, that seems like a type of theory that kind of makes physics the most fundamental thing in explaining how the universe works. Whereas if someone says mind is the cause of everything, that seems like a completely different kind of metaphysics. That seems like, okay, so it's actually not something physical, perceptual, not some kind of stuff which explains how the world is, rather something mental, something non-physical explains how the world is. And Socrates says, I like that. However, then he was sort of, reading the fine print, and Anaxagoras sort of, as soon as he got to the details, was only talking about the same sorts of things as the others, about fire and the other elements and so on. So Socrates was completely disappointed. He thought, It was a kind of promise to say that mind is the cause of everything. But Anaxagoras didn't deliver. At the end of the day, he was still talking about material, physical causes. But why is it that Socrates so much wants a theory which makes mind the cause? He says that he wants a theory that explains why he is sitting in prison rather than taking the opportunity that was offered to him to leave and escape and get on a boat and get away and not have to drink the hemlock and escape from the death penalty. So Socrates was given that opportunity. He was given the chance to get away, and he didn't take the chance. So he says, what I want from a theory of the universe is that it explains to me how it works that I'm still sitting here rather than having left. And that becomes a kind of standard example then in ancient theory of action. Just a sentence, so and so, Socrates or whoever is sitting versus Socrates is walking. So why is it that Socrates is sitting rather than Socrates is walking? And Socrates is a physical thing, a physical item in the world. And Socrates says he wants a theory of the universe that can explain why it is the case that Socrates is sitting rather than Socrates is walking. And that is why Anaxagoras' claim that nous is the cause of everything seemed so attractive. So your little puzzle and task for today is just to explain, if you had the intuitions that Socrates seems to have here, why would it be that nous or mind is the cause of everything? How would that explain the fact that Socrates is sitting rather than walking?